going on, guys? It's Jeff the IT guy. So you got $500 to spend, you want to get a PC but you don't know where to start? Don't worry, Uncle Jeff has got your back. This right here is the $500 eBay PC. And so what I did is I went and scoured eBay, got some parts, got them in, put this rig together, and I'm going to share with you what kind of performance you can get from spending $500. Because if you don't know, PC parts right now out in the world are hard to find. New, used, it doesn't matter. Prices are sky high. So you got to go about this smart. If you haven't already, go ahead, subscribe to the channel for more great videos like this. And let's go ahead and let's talk about the PC. So let's talk about the parts. What I did was I found a Ryzen 5 1600X. It's a first gen Ryzen for around $100. The second thing I found was a AMD RX 480 for about $90. And these are older parts. They're not new. They're several generations old, and so therefore, you know, I was able to save quite a bit of money by getting something that was older. Well, the B450 motherboard. This one here happens to be the Strix B450F from Asus. We've got NZXT H500. These are, you can buy new for around $50. There's also cheaper cases to go with. Power supplies, of Corsair 500 watt. Power supplies are really expensive right now. I wouldn't suggest buying a power supply currently used. However you can, and we'll talk about the price of parts that I found all together, and we'll look at that. And then for storage, it's got an M.2 drive that I had laying around. You know, gotta save money somewhere for myself. But we'll talk about the price of the parts for you. And so whenever you go and approach this build, doing something like this, I would suggest that for the case, the power supply, and storage, if you can afford it, to buy a new case, power supply, and storage. If you can't afford it, you can check out something like Facebook Marketplace and see if you have some cases or power supplies close to you. The reason for that is because they're really heavy and you're going to end up spending a lot of money just on shipping, which is something that you don't want to do. This is a budget build. You want to save your money, so you might as well save it on shipping. Same thing with power supply. I buy a new one just so you have that warranty. Find one, you know, for something like this, a 500 watt, if you can find one on sale. You know, if not, you can buy used as well. And then storage, I would try to find something on sale if you could. If not, though, we can go ahead and talk about the pricing for the used. And so with the used pricing for the parts, this is on eBay. I didn't look at Craigslist or anything like that. This is just for the parts. So just the parts, like I said, didn't look on anywhere local, just on eBay. CPU, about $100 for a 1600X. A 2600, you know, 1700, 1800, all those are actually really high right now, but you can get this for, you know, like I said, about $100. The GPU, this was $95, and it was free shipping for the reference design RX 480 with 4 gig. You might be able to find an Nvidia equivalent, but this really isn't a bad deal for that. So for a case, you know, about $50. You can find a new case, about $50. For the motherboard, a used motherboard for a B450 is about $80 right now on eBay. The RAM's relatively cheap. So used RAM, you know, you might be able to find 8 gigs for about $30. If you want to buy 16 gigs new, it's about 50-ish. For the power supply, a used power supply, that's about 550 watts, that's EVGA. Used is about $40. They're a little bit heavy, so they're going to have a higher shipping cost. So it'll be about $40 to $50 if you find one, and they offer free shipping. For the SSD, if you want to get around a 500 gig, like a Lite-On or something that's lower end M.2 SSD, or a regular SSD, a 2.5-inch SSD, it's going to be about $35. Okay? And so that brings our total cost to $463, which really isn't bad to have a complete machine, right? So we've got a complete machine. There's not a whole lot going on. It plays games. We're looking at 1080p here, and so it's a little bit less than the consoles. Let's talk about performance, though. That's what we want to hear. That's what we want to see. What kind of performance can we get out of this machine? Okay, so the games that I tested for this were Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Far Cry 5, The Division 2, and Call of Duty Modern Warfare. And the reason I chose those games is several of them have built-in benchmarks. Oh, and Borderlands 3. Several of them have built-in benchmarks, so it gets you a repeatable result. And then also, I know Call of Duty is very popular right now, and so you'll want to see that performance, right? So for Borderlands 3 at lowish settings, almost the lowest, with this PC, we're looking at about 80 FPS at 1080p. It's not bad. You can raise up the details and get around 60. So it's really not that bad. Borderlands 3 is pretty, it can be hard to run just due to the particle effects and everything. For Assassin's Creed Odyssey at very high settings, we had an average of about 35 to 40 FPS. And it was relatively smooth. You could definitely lower the settings in Assassin's Creed Odyssey down to like medium, and you'd be able to hit that 60 FPS mark, which is what you want to hit. So for Far Cry 5 at high settings, we were able to hold an average of about 60 FPS, which is pretty good. So there in the benchmark, it was about an average of 60 FPS. That's really good. For the Division 2, during the benchmark at medium settings, it was able to do 61 FPS. So that's also pretty good. And then Modern Warfare, with the settings, I didn't choose a preset defined settings. I like to kind of mess around because there's certain things I like, certain things I don't. But around the low to medium mark had around 85 FPS. So the settings were, some were low, some were high, some were medium. You know, it was a custom setting that I used because I wanted the game to look good, but I still wanted higher FPS. And I also didn't want to hit the 4 gig RAM buffer on the card. And so seeing about 85 FPS is the average, which is really good if you've got like a 75 hertz monitor. More FPS, more good. Am I right? So as you can see, the performance on this is really, really good, actually. It's not bad. The performance might not be as good as what it used to be for something that was a $500 rig, but it's still pretty good considering that the RX 480 when it came out was, you know, almost a $300 card. The 1600 was like a $200 processor. So I mean, it's 6 cores, 12 threads, which is really good if you want to do some multitasking, and hopefully things will start to settle down here as far as pricing goes. So let's talk about what you'd have to get if you wanted to buy new, because that's important. We want to look and see really what the cost savings are here as far as new goes. So for the CPU, if you're going to go new, in this price range, you've got two choices, which is the Ryzen 3 3100, which is a quad-core hyper-threaded or multi-threaded part. So it has 4 cores, 8 threads. Or you can go with the Intel i3 10100, which is also a quad-core hyper-threaded part. So 4 cores, 8 threads. With the Ryzen system, you would be able to get a B450, which would allow you to overclock and use higher speed RAM. With the 10100, the i3, you'd have to get something like an H570 board or B460, whatever they call it, and you'd be limited to the fast amount of speed that you could use on your RAM. So your RAM speed would be limited. You can't overclock, and you'd be limited for your upgrade path. So the Ryzen would be to me, is a better idea because you can upgrade on the B450 platform. If you wanted to go to, like a 3600 or a 3700X, something like that later on, you could do that. You have upgrade options in the future. So if you wanted to buy a used CPU, a year or two down the road, you could do that, slot it into your B450 motherboard, and be off to the races. For graphics card, you've got the option of a 1650 Super, which is about $159. Might be able to find an RX 5500 XT at that price range as well. The 1650 Super and the RX 480 actually trade blows, so they're very close in performance. You'd be able to find 8 gigs of RAM. You'd be able to find, a 500 watt power supply, about a $40 case, and then you'd be able to have either an M.2 drive or a hard drive. You wouldn't be able to have both at that price range. And buying new parts with this, if you're looking at the same kind of like how they slot in as far as price bracket goes, buying new parts is going to be about $561 versus $463. And so that's a $100 difference to have roughly the same performance. So, but you do get a warranty and things like that with new parts. You don't know, you actually know if they're new, you don't know what they've been through. So, thank you all for watching. I hope this helps you make a decision. Also, at this price range, you could get a console. It's going to be really hard to beat a PS5 or an Xbox One Series or an Xbox Series X at the $500 price range for the performance that they're offering. So, keep that in mind. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe. It really helps me out. I really appreciate it. We're getting really close to my goal of 1,000 subs. It means a lot to me, and I really appreciate the help. Stay tuned. We're going to be doing a lot of other cool videos. This is actually going to end up being my CPU cooler bench or test system, and so we're going to start testing CPU coolers in here, air and water, and seeing how they do. And we'll start building up some data, and we'll see how they do inside the case and everything like that. And so that way you know what CPU cooler you should get and what's the best for your money. Listen, y'all stay safe out there. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think about the build, the performance. If you think I was right about the parts that you could get for around the same price range. Also, if you're if you're a big Star Wars fan and you're watching The Mandalorian Season 2, let me know what you think. Listen, y'all stay safe out there.